If you watch a modern Banjo-Kazooie speedrun, you're going to see a trick called a bit clip, used to do some pretty huge skips. This example is Mad Monster Mansion early. And you'll also see another much more complicated bit clip used to skip the 810 note door. So it's fair to say that bit clips busted this game wide open when they were found. But it turns out these two skips were actually possible before bit clips were found at all. And this is through something called a falling lip clip. Similar to a ledge clip, but much more powerful. There's MMM early. And here's the original method for 810 skip that was found, with absolutely no bit clips at all. Now, bit clips have pretty much obsoleted these falling lip clips, but they're still a really interesting part of Banjo-Kazooie history worth talking about. In this video, we're going to do that. This is Banjo-Kazooie falling lip clips explained. Before we start, I want to give a little disclaimer. Most of what's being done in this video I've just figured out through sort of trial and error rather than looking at the code. So some numbers might be a little bit off and some of the stuff might just be my theory about how this stuff works. But I really want to take you through the journey of what I've sort of done to understand this glitch in detail. I'm sure there'll be a few bits and pieces that I've interpreted wrong, but that's sort of part of the fun of glitch hunting sometimes. The first thing I want to talk about in this video is zipping up to ledges. In this game, it has a mechanism where Banjo zips up to a ledge. So if the ledge is less than roughly 60 units, Banjo will sort of walk into the ledge and zip up to the top of it. Like if you're walking up a step or something. If it's more than roughly 60 units, Banjo zips out. And we can actually see this in action in the game. So to verify this, we're going to look at this slope in Rusty Bucket Bay, and in particular we're going to blow up the X, Y and Z coordinates down the bottom left so you can just have a closer look at those. I've frozen my X coordinate to 2100, which essentially means I'll be locked to moving in this straight line up and down no matter what. And on that line, this slope has a height of about 50 units. So what we can see is that if Banjo walks towards the slope, he will zip up to it. It's very easy in Talon Trot, you just walk straight up and down. But when you're walking on foot, it's a little bit trickier. You can still get up there though, with enough persistence. If I freeze my X position a little bit to the left instead, you'll notice that we can sort of still get up, but it's a bit trickier. We're getting up to a height of 55 when we get onto the ledge here. If I freeze the X position that little bit more left, you can see the height of the slope here is at 60, and I can still get up, but it's really quite difficult. I think potentially what's happening here is when you're getting up, you're sort of angling Banjo-Kazooie in such a way that it helps. But if I freeze my X position here at minus 2150, that gives me a height of 75, and I pretty much can't make it up. So no matter what I do, even if I walk, Talon Trot, I just cannot get up this ledge, and the reason is that's too high for Banjo to do that automatic zip up. So in some situations you can sort of get Banjo hooked like this and gaining a little bit of height here, and that helps you make the difference, but the 75 is just too tall to try and zip up here. So my guess is the actual number you can zip up is something around 60, maybe a little bit less, and to actually get the zip up you need a little bit of extra height, just like that. You can see I just made it up with 75 there, but the frame before that my height was 35 on the slope. So you can sort of gain a bit of extra height by running up the slope partially and then use that to bridge the gap. But anything higher than 75 I wouldn't be making it up this slope. So if you're familiar with Banjo-Kazooie speedruns, you'll know ledges like this are very broken and we can basically just clip through them. If you think like spring clip for example in a speedrun, that's an example of one of these clips. So we're going to have a look here. Essentially what you do is you jump and you get hooked on the ledge there, and then you build up enough speed to fall through. I am going to be showing the Y velocity as well on screen just down the bottom there, so you'll be able to sort of have a look at that. The Y velocity starts off just normally, and then you gradually build up speed on the ledge, and when the Y velocity gets high enough, you'll fall through the ledge. Sort of. So essentially what's happening is you're getting enough downward speed to clip through the ledge. But if I just do that on its own, it doesn't always work. So check out here, just to the left, I'm going to build up a lot of downward speed and you'd think I'd be falling through. But I just don't. Like I just don't clip. And if you look at this compared to a successful clip attempt, you'll see a difference. So in a successful clip attempt, we start by building up speed to the left here. Y velocity goes up, but then we move over to the right. And as I move to the right, we'll see I actually get the clip once I go far enough right. Now my theory as to why this works is because when you move right, you're going into that range where you're trying to zip up onto the ledge, but Banjo instead falls through the ledge. So essentially the game's doing something like this. We've got our normal Banjo at the top there, but then sort of where Banjo wants to be on the next frame on the bottom. So if you built up a lot of Y speed downwards, Banjo wants to be under the floor, but obviously can't do it because there's a floor there. Essentially, at least what I think is happening, is this. So you're going into the ledge where Banjo would get zipped up, but something's going wrong in that zipping up code where Banjo then just stays under the floor and drops down. The thing that's going wrong is you got too much downwards Y speed. Now we can verify this clipping stuff by basically just freezing our values again. So I've frozen it at 2080 for the X, so the Y is sort of locked at 40, but I've also frozen the Y speed to just be set at the maximum terminal velocity minus 4000. So we're falling downwards if we try and jump. Alright, so essentially what happens is you just walk into that ledge and fall straight through. But if I try and do the same thing when Y is 50 on the ledge here, you can see that pretty much no matter what happens, I won't be able to make it through the ledge. So I think what's happening here is Banjo won't be able to make the jump up the ledge, so he wouldn't get zipped up if you walked into it at 50 here. So essentially I'm not able to clip through, no matter what. It's a bit weird. So I'm hoping this helps show sort of why we get hooked on a ledge on the left here, and then sort of zip across to the right. So basically what you're doing is you're using that left bit of the ledge here to build up a lot of speed, and then you're gradually moving onto the right so that you're within that zipping up position differential, and then you're falling straight through the ledge when that happens. So next time you see a runner doing spring clip, have an eye on what they're doing. Most likely they'll be jumping up onto the ledge, starting off on the right here, at the higher point, and even when they build up their velocity, they won't clip until they move back to the left. Once they're left enough, they clip through. I'll also talk about a few variations. For example, this is 640 skip, so something like this, you get hooked in the middle. And you build up a lot of speed very quickly, so we're already at minus 4000. And basically at this point, you can sit in the middle for as long as you want and you won't clip through. The only way you can clip through is by going off to the left on a corner. Now, my theory is the corner raises you up a little bit, just enough so that you hit that zipping height where you would zip up to the ledge and instead you just clip through. But the actual gap between the floor and this ledge that we're hooked on here is about 62 units, and that's the reason why you can't do 640 skip in the middle. You have to go to one of those corners to get the height boost and clip through. And this sort of brings us to Mad Monster Mansion early. You would think that you could get up on the steps in Mad Monster Mansion and just clip through, but unfortunately these steps have a height differential of about 76 units each time you go up a step. Our middle one's 77 units high. So if you're going to clip on the steps, probably your best bet would be the top one, and all you need to do is clip through because there's solid floor underneath. You clip through that, you're through into Mad Monster Mansion. But the frustrating thing is these steps are just high enough that you can't make it work. You can still get hooked on very easily and build up a lot of Y speed, and you can pretty much hold that Y speed forever. But you're never going to clip through because you're not at that particular height that you need to clip through the ledge. If these steps were maybe just that little bit lower, we'd have a very easy Mad Monster Mansion early. So in this part of the video, we're going to talk about falling lip clips. Now these are essentially the same as normal lip clips that I've been showing you up to now, only they work on slightly higher ledges. Normally, for example, this block with the note on it wouldn't be clippable. It's too high, just like the Mad Monster Mansion steps. But we can see here, you do clip through eventually. So we're going to look in this part how that's possible. So the real trick here is basically jumping off a higher ledge. So if you jump off here, you've got enough falling speed there to clip through the block. Now, jumping off there, you build up basically terminal velocity before you hit it. You can see Y speed on the left is pretty much minus 3470 when you're about to clip through. So that's the big trick to getting this to work. But there's a bit more nuance to it than that. Now, although the clip in the video looked pretty simple, there's actually a lot going on behind the scenes, and there's 3 conditions you have to hit to get a falling lip clip like we did before. So the first condition is to be about to zip up to the ledge, which is less than that about 60 units below. I only use Banjo's head to represent where he is, but you can imagine there's sort of this zone where if you're in it you would zip up to that ledge, just like with all the other clips we've seen in this video. The next condition is a little bit weird. You have to be at the right height to get something called a landing zip on the floor below. Now, I haven't talked about landing zips at all in this video, but I do have an entire other video on the channel dedicated to it. So if you're interested, check that out. But pretty much what you need to know is there's this zone 55 to 66 units onto the floor, and if you get Banjo's head stuck in on the next frame, then he will zip to another floor triangle. So you need that to happen as well. And you can imagine this is sort of precise to line up, which is why you tend to see this more in TASs than RTA. The last step is you need to get a lag frame on the frame you're about to fall through the floor. Now this is easier said than done, but usually you can sort of do it just by flicking your camera around or pooping eggs or something like that. If you get all three of these things, then you're going to clip through the floor, even though the ledge is higher than 60 units, and Banjo will go through, and you clip. So coming back to our BizHawk, we'll see it in action. Yeah, I've got the X, Y, and Z position there, but more importantly, I've got the projected landing height. So as Banjo sort of jumps off the ledge here, that landing height is going to update. So if I were to land right now on the floor that I'm over, I'd land 145 units into the floor. That's not great because we want 55 to 66. So we can see when I get through here, it says zip true because my landing is 62.17 and it's in that 55 to 66 range. So if I landed on this floor just as is, Banjo would sort of zip off to the side onto one of the floor triangles. And then what I'm going to do is just keep going. And as we fall on, you can see that frame before, I'm at 774. Now that is within the range that I'd be zipping up onto the height of this note ledge here. And I've still got that zip true. Now this TAS here is a little bit cheated because I used a synthetic lag frame to get it, but I have got this same clip using real lag frames before. Essentially for testing purposes, I've made it so that if I press up on the C stick, well, the C up button, it causes a lag frame. So that lag frame happens and Banjo sort of makes it through the floor. You can see that if I don't have this up press, Banjo would just sort of hit the floor and nothing really good would happen. So all these clips that you're about to see later on in the video I have got legitimately, but it's important to note that we do have this testing tool to make it a little bit easier for ourselves. Now just quickly on that height difference, I've got 774 on the Y and the actual platform height is at 800, so that is within that 60-ish unit range to be able to zip up onto the platform. So that's sort of the theory behind these falling lip clips. I find it really weird that all three of these conditions are necessary, whereas with the normal lip clips, only the first one's necessary, but it's just the only way I've ever been able to make it work. Now, one limitation of this is sort of that, well, if the ledge is higher, you can't actually make it work, because the difference between that top green height and the bottom green height is so big that you can't bridge that gap within a single frame. So I've never found a way to clip into something that's a little bit taller than this. The max I've been able to do is about 127 units high in total for the ledge. So it is a bit unfortunate that you have that height limit. It's sort of on my glitch hunting to-do list, but I really want to find a way to clip through a shape something like this, where you're not relying on the ledge having a fixed height, you're sort of clipping through the ground there. It could be that you get a clip there, or it could be that you get a clip there, I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like it really should be possible in theory to do this, even though I've never got it in practice. In fact, I know a glitch exactly like this one here is possible if you use Beat Bomb, so I'm not sure if there's just maybe some speed or height limitation that I'm missing, but it would be great if we could get a falling lip clip into just any general corner like this. It would actually save a lot more time. I think the key to getting something like this would be actually looking into the code and seeing what's going on rather than just doing all the scientific kind of testing and conjecture making. So the first application we're looking at is Mad Monster Mansion Early. You can see I'm sort of on the roof here and pooping a whole bunch of eggs. This is to cause the lag frame that I want. I jump off and zoom the camera in as I'm about to hit the step, and that camera zoom in sort of helps get the lag frame there. But this has all the pieces of the puzzle necessary. We have that height enough to zip up on the step, but also a height to get a landing zip on the ground below, and we've got the lag frame there. And this was actually the first method ever found to do Mad Monster Mansion Early before bit clips were ever discovered at all. This method is a lot easier to do than bit clips because it doesn't rely on floating point precision, but realistically in RTA to actually get a setup for this would be way too difficult, because you'd have to have a setup for the lag frame and sort of you'd have to get up onto the roof all in setup mode. It's a lot easier to just do a bit clip setup or something like that. Another fun one, we got a clip near boombox. This in theory could be used to get into the boombox room without watching the crane cutscene to open it. We have this fun one, which is a Rusty Bucket Bay lobby clip. I was only able to get this in theory using that hacked lag frame because I couldn't get a real lag frame here, but in theory it would probably be possible. You can use a Taz jump off here and then sort of get through that box there to get through. Just for a little bit of fun here, although it could be a fundamental tool in RBB early if we ever find it. Now moving on to something more useful, we got a clip out of Woz's cave. So normally in 100% you finish on this room and do a death warp, but doing a clip here would let you keep all your notes, so in theory you could do Woz's cave in the middle of the level if you wanted to. Another really useful one, we get into the church without opening it. This would save you a whole bunch of time hitting the switch and getting the speed shoes and everything, and it'd be pretty useful in the 100% run. And if you're in the church, why not have a really easy way to get out? You can just do organ clip here, straight through the organ and out of bounds, and you keep your notes when you void out too. And we also have this really cool one which lets you get out of Mumbo's Mountain. Rather than running back to the start, why not just jump, do a falling lip clip and void out. Pretty quick. And probably the most important application here, this was the first way the 810 skip was ever found, and essentially it used one of these falling lip clips. It's a little bit different though. What you do is you beak barge forward to build up speed on this pole, and then you want to clip through the pole. You use a grunty text to get a lag frame, and that's just a matter of timing. Then you can flood it underneath the door and ground pound back up through. There's 810 skip without big clips. Now, although this trig looks pretty easy, it's actually insanely difficult, even with Taz. It depends on every little detail, even how the cauldron's sleeping and moving just slightly up and down, that actually matters. So when I Tazzed this and found out that it was possible, it took 4 or 5 days straight of Tazzing, so maybe like 50-60 hours of Tazzing just to actually get it once. But although it's heaps of work, it was definitely worth it to know 810 skip was possible, even though we found big clips not long after and it was possible with those. So if RTA runners are ever going to do 810 skip, they'll need either a bit clip setup or some kind of realistic setup to do this thing here. Of course, if you fail this thing, you wake up the cauldron and then you can't do it again, so it can be pretty tricky. But I think given this took about 4 or 5 days to Taz, I don't see it being very realistic that an RTA setup is found for this one. Now, as I've sort of mentioned in this video already, bit clips have completely obsoleted falling lip clips. You can bit clip almost everywhere, you can use it to get past walls, and you're never really going to need to set up a falling lip clip for anything. Although that being said, I do really miss that brief window where they were used, because it's really cool to find spots where you can use falling lip clips, and it's actually a lot easier to do falling lip clips in a Taz setting. Bit clips have sort of killed Taz's in a sense because they're so precise. If you want to do them quickly, you're going to need weeks and weeks and weeks of Tazzing to set up something mildly quick, whereas with falling lip clips you can knock it out in a couple of hours. And most Tazes you see these days, due to that, use hacks to get into positions for bit clips like this one here. Basically what they do is set a script which just sets your position to what you need, although the Tazes do try and get pretty close to that before they actually do it. So that sort of means that Tazes of Banjo have sort of this asterisk next to them saying, well, these Tazes are theoretically possible, but we had to hack it in because otherwise these Tazes would take years and years to make. Whereas with falling lip clips, it's not quite the case. So Tazzing of Banjo is in a bit of a weird state now. I am glad that bit clips were found because, well, they're pretty useful and they save a whole bunch of time, but it was a bit of a charming period of time where we used falling lip clips. That's going to be all for this video, and thanks so much for watching.